The Writer's Dossier Podcast is a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network.
I'm Steve Stratton, and this is my Writer's Dossier.
No writers were harmed in the production of this podcast.
Today in the interrogation chair, it's one of my favorite American Ninja Warriors, author of the Lance Bear Wolf series, Steve Stratton. Hear about Steve's path to publishing, his wild Steve McQueen lifestyle, what his last trip to the French Laundry was like, and what we're each cooking the next time I'm at his place in Colorado. Welcome to the Dossier Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Writer's Dossier, and I am back here with an inaugural member of the Writer's Dossier, Mr. Steve Stratton. How are you, brother?
I'm great. How's that out there in Ohio, man?
Northwest Ohio. I got my Mud Hens hat on. You noticed earlier. It is finally warming up. We've got green everywhere, so it's fantastic here. What about Denver? Everything good there in the Aurora-ish area?
Yeah, real good. Trentatagra has been scooped up by ice, so I had carry less one magazine around town, and it's green here too. So all good.
There's my friend Steve Stratton packing. All right, we get right into it here on the Writer's Dossier. People don't have a lot of time. We respect that, and we encourage you to find out everything that I found out about Steve Stratton, at least the publishable parts. Go to thewritersdossier.com and look up Steve, his enormous, amazing background we're going to get into tonight. But first, bro, I want to ask you, you went from writing your first Lance Bear Wolf novels with Force Poseidon, then Stratton Media is who you're with, and are you still doing something with Mike Dolan at Winding Road Stories? You're really busy because after your dossier went viral, my inbox is full of questions about what's next for Steve Stratton.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Stratton Media is my own imprint, so that's how I switched over after, I hired myself for $1. And so that's how I moved forward with the series. I got all the rights back. Force Poseidon, Dan was really nice about that. And so that's where I've got my fourth book out now. Caribbean Harvest came out. And
earlier this year,
yep. Right. And since then, I did sign on with Winding Road Stories, Michael Dolan. We've got a different series that'll come out in the fall. And I've also signed up with Wargate, and I am publishing a 3-book series inside the Mongol Moon universe. So even though Mr. Sibley's still alive, it's not like Clancy kind of thing. We're a bunch of us are writing stories in that World War III EMP kind of universe and having fun. I'm doing the final edits on the first 9,400 word manuscript right now.
Just a happy imagination of what could be. We're excited about that.
Yeah, Lance and Ellie end up in Wyoming, so it's exciting.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you can thread those guys in there somewhere too. Nice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We've interviewed a lot of writers, and like I said, I think we're up to about 160 dossiers, but few rival the varied background of what you've done in your life. You did, and I'm going to run off a loose list of things that are unredacted. You did White House communications. You worked with the Secret Service. You somehow passed the Foreign Service exam, I think. You served in the Army Reserves as a Special Forces qualified operator. You've raced just about every kind of vehicle and snow vehicle out there. You rode and owned horses on your own ranch, and you always seem to be doing something crazy. What's the most dangerous thing you've done?
Besides dating as I got older, I'd say.
I'm telling your wife you said that. I'm going to text her to the link to this show as soon as it's out.
So, I mean, most people will go right away to skydiving. And I've been a part of, world records and blah, blah, blah. But I'd say scuba diving with sharks goes to the top of the list because they're more unpredictable, right? If I make a mistake and burn through 2 parachutes and end up real short, peering over the top of my boots because I thundered in, that's all me. But, when you got a element, a hunter element in your AO, as in white tips and mako sharks and things like that, that's exciting. I tend to not use a lot of oxygen, hold my breath a lot when I'm doing those kind of dives. But so That's probably it.
That's what I was going to ask. What kind of sharks were we talking about? Because I moved to the Virgin Islands and I got my rescue certification, worked on a dive boat, took people out. Those are my crazy days. And we saw, we see nurse sharks and barracuda all the time. And some people never seen them before and they flip out. And I'm like, no, it's cool. They're not going to, nothing here is going to hurt you. I mean, there was a tiger shark once, but where were you doing this diving? And when are you booking the cage dive tour trip to South Africa, my man?
As far as my wife's concerned, no time soon. I'm not climbing any more, 19K mountains or something like that. No oxygen. But yeah, I mean, black tips and some other species, Hawaii and,
Okay.
in the Pacific, that kind of thing like that. But really, at the end of the day, if you're respectful, and I'm not up there to take pictures, rubbing their noses, making friends. But it is interesting to see these hunters in the wild. And yeah, not a lot of friends want to go with you on those dives.
Well, hey, let's book it because I know Hawaii's a lot of fun, but I've got to tell you now, you have to do the Galapagos. There is, and I'm telling you this from firsthand, there's nothing like swimming up to a pod of hammerhead sharks and seeing an eyeball just turn. It was the size of a baseball. We're parallel with this group of hammerheads, and they don't even look. This is the eyeball come, and you're like, cool, man. Yeah, no problem. The Galapagos, dude. Do the Galapagos. That's a trip of a lifetime.
We used to do reciprocal training with the SAS, and they would come to Florida, and we would take them to the parachute water, the Air Force school that was at Turkey Point. So at Turkey Point, barracuda and hammerhead shark. There you go. Barracuda and hammerhead shark breeding ground there in Homestead Bay. Yeah, I've seen a few, and they remind me of llamas. Like, they don't have to turn their head; they're just bugged eyes. They're looking over at you. I was more nervous about the barracuda getting a little crazy than I was the hammerhead. But we used to really amp it up with the SAS guys. They would be going into the water, tucked into a ball, making crosses, as they'd come to the water. But we just made jokes about dog tags and things, normal stuff.
Shiny stuff. Yeah. I know you said SAS, but I went ahead and while you're talking, put on my OSS hat for you don't quite go back to the OSS days, but they're kind of cousins a little bit.
Yeah. Jedburgh team. Some of my guys thought that I was there for those initial briefing.
What was it like working with Ellen Dulles?
Exactly. Yeah, what a cool time those people had.
Yeah, I mean, doing some stuff for the first time, trying new things out. Insane.
Exactly.
Things are a little safer now for the most part. Steve, after all of your life's exploits, why did you turn to writing? Solitary, alone. Steve McQueen, race car driver, was that just not in the cards for you, or you couldn't land that Ricky Bobby Wonder Bread sponsorship you were looking for?
Well, if we're going to talk about racing cars, I was maybe an above average district, national, maybe top 10 kind of guy for sports car racing in some of the cheaper divisions where you're not spending $100,000 on a motor. But real life got in the way of that. But most of my time in the military, I mean, training Colombians, doing things like that. But I spent a lot of time alone. I don't want to say, I was a solo operator all the time, but there was a lot of time where like I'd get sent somewhere with a radio kit and it's like, hang out here in case we need you for 3 weeks, and then I get the call to pack it up and go home, things like that.
Steve under a poncho in his hide, just hanging out, waiting for the call.
Or Steve looking out over the beach in Bali from the house that we rented. Yeah, it wasn't all dirts and grubs and, hide sites with number 10 tin cans you're looking out of, the old school, sick kind of stuff. But
you had a lot of alone time. You're kind of used to that. You're flexible enough to be able to sit there by yourself in front of a keyboard and start coming up with stories out of whole cloth to fill an empty page, you're saying.
I oftentimes have to remind myself to get up, which is good because I'm on blood thinners. Number one, don't die in a chair. But also, number two, to get up and go.
Hot tip, we're breaking news here on the Raiders Dossier.
Yeah, Steve Stratton.
Winding Road Stories is a traditional and innovative publishing company located in New York City. It was created by writers for writers, and I can tell you that they really have an author-centric approach in dealing with their creators. They don't just take your manuscript and disappear. They work with you to make it the best it can be. I met with Winding Road's founding editor, Michael Dolan, a few years ago, and we've been in touch ever since. He's the kind of guy I can text when I have a question about anything, and he always responds with wisdom and insights that I often lack. Winding Road Stories believes that a good story deserves to be shared, and they're looking for stories from all genres. They want to help develop your passion projects, so look them up. Find them on social media everywhere and at windingroadstories.com.
So, yeah, my imagination's been big, strong since I was a kid. I was a sci-fi guy, all the sci-fi greats. I swear I'm part of the Herbert family somehow. I've got Dune in me. Every time I shake on my socks, there's Dune dust. But yeah, so I can sit down and crank it out. Right now, I'm in this manuscript. I'm trying a different idea though. I'm writing like there's 4 people I want to write into the story. I'm looking at writing their whole story that would go all through the book individually, and then seeing what it's like to bring them together and mesh the stories together, keeping in mind these threads and stuff like that. And so it's interesting brain play.
I'll tell you, you bring up something that one of my favorite movies I've been totally crazy about, and I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it's a 2004 movie called Crash. It has an amazing cast, and it's about different characters who are living their separate lives, and then they all come together. It's a Paul Haggis film, who's amazing, but it has Don Cheadle, Sandra Bullock, Tandy Newton. Oh my goodness, Tony Danza's in it.
It was written that way, where they're just like this part of the movie, this part, and then
then it all comes together. So yeah, anyone who hasn't seen Crash, it's dark and it is so moving. So that's cool. Good for you, trying something new, bringing new characters together. And this is with the new outfit,
right? So I was lucky enough to be asked to write into this book, Apocalypse into Pieces. You could see all the other authors.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So Mark wrote the seminal 2 books, Mongol Moon behind me and Dances with Devils, and mostly takes place on the East Coast, which is nice because it's good every now and again when Northern Virginia gets beat up in a book. Yeah, so I was lucky enough to write in that, and then this manuscript I'm finishing is a long form story building out of the short story.
Oh, cool.
And so my guys who are based in Tampa were in Wyoming doing training, because Lance is the commander now. And so he's like, let's go do training. By the way, when we're done, we'll go elk hunting and do some other fun things, go skiing, whatever.
Sounds like some Landsbear Wolf. So people don't worry about losing your Landsbear Wolf. He's going to be threaded through there. Nice.
Exactly right. And I've got some ideas about what the next Lance Shadow Tier book is going to be. A couple different things going on. Bioweapons and fentanyls, of course, is an easy one. So.
All right. Well, let's make you sound really cool here. I've got a question for you. You're known to be quite a foodie in the writer circles, and I've threatened to crash your place. I threatened to crash your place last February when I was out in Denver, and I told you I would cook for you and your wife my trademark pancetta and asparagus risotto with wild mushrooms. You insisted I couldn't be given the keys to your kitchen, so what are you cooking instead? What's your dish?
What's my dish? Well, I'm the grill master. I mean, I grew up in California. We did our refried beans on the grill. We did our salmon. We did everything a lot of stuff on the grill. So that's where my expertise lies. Like, I know nothing about making, I watch my wife do a risotto, but I've asked her to let me do it with supervision. So you're way ahead of me, bud. I've got that. I've got that backyard kind of expertise, cooking or smoking meats, things like that. And harvesting the animals to do it with. Yeah. You and my wife could just,
have a ball.
Of course, she'd love it. She'd love it. I joke about not getting the keys to the kitchen, but.
Well, hey, then don't sell yourself short. When was the last time you were at the French Laundry?
It wasn't that long ago, man. Well, we finally got in. I think it was actually April. We got in. And so we used it as an excuse. I have one remaining aunt in both sides of the family, and she's up in Eureka, up there north. And so we flew into Sacramento and went up through wine country and had a good time, raining like cats and dogs, and drove back down and then went to the French Laundry. And luckily I got an Uber, which was a big old Suburban, a Saurus, because their water was like, 6-8 inches deep in some places. Crazy. But that meal was, and my wife got to stand next to and got a hug from Thomas Keller. So she was over the moon. It was like brownie points for a year, guys. I'm telling you.
Brownie points and shipping into that okay for sure at the French Laundry.
A bingo, yes.
Hey, kind of on the in the arena of food and drink, there are a lot of good bourbons out there. What's the deal with Basil Hayden's being your house bourbon?
Just for me, it's smooth. I mean, we have a great distiller here called Stranahan's in right in Denver.
Yeah, they've got the big giant bottle, really tall, yellow label.
Right, and they've got several different kinds and things like that. And so American whiskeys have that a little bit more of a bite to them, things like that. And so, I grew up in the Army. I literally got on my first team, and my team sergeant like, don't forget to bring 2 liters of Coke, right? And I'm like, okay. So I jumped a Coke 2 liter, taped it all up, and I jumped in with it. And, we're just doing an exercise. I jump in with it. Turns out John's got a bottle of Jim Beam in his rucksack. John had maybe 1 meal, ammunition, a whoopee, a poncho liner. And that poncho liner was wrapped up around the Jim Beam. So, that kind of thing. So we always, at the end of training, we always cracked it open and
can't beat the whoopee. Mine's in the Foot Locker. Best, softest, warmest thing out there.
Oh, you got it. That was it.
Hey, we're gonna wrap things up here. Last question: where are you headed next? Where can we find Steve Stratton?
Yeah, so next will be maybe Killer Nashville in August, but certainly we're going to New Orleans and BoucherCon.
Nice.
Yeah, and so I'll see you there. And then after that, there's the Military Riders is going to be in Kansas City, so I might just drive over and do that conference. So those are the 2 that can't, because of what's going on with family, I won't make it to Thriller Fest this year. But So that's where I'll be.
Cool. Well, yeah, I've marked the week of BoucherCon. Looking forward to that. I know a lot of people I've talked to are going, so we're gonna have some fun at that. It'll be so good to see you again, because I'll never forget my first BoucherCon in San Diego. I walked up to a table and I saw you about 50 feet away, and you were standing with Simon Gervais and a couple other guys.
Jack, maybe. Yeah, Jack.
Yeah, Jack was there at that one. Michael Carlson was there, and you just extended your hand, and I think you gave me a hug and just welcomed me right in. So thank you, and thank you for being in the first group of dossiers to drop almost 2 years ago now. We love all the updates, and we love seeing you, and thanks for everything you've done. You've been so kind to me, and I'm really glad to have you here on the Writer's Dossier podcast.
Awesome. Thank you for having me again. Good to see you,
everybody. Buddy. Be sure to check out Steve Stratton. The website is stevestrattonusa.com. Is that right? See, I don't even need to look anymore. And be sure to follow Steve on social media, because you are pretty active on social media. You're following and promoting and giving updates. So let's look forward to that. Everybody, thanks for joining us tonight on the Writer's Dossier podcast. Go to thewritersdossier.com and stevestrattonusa.com for more. We are out. Thanks. Goodbye, everybody. The Dossier Podcast is a production of The Idea Academy.